I love that song, and I love the way Brooke sings it. Look up. Trouble's always going to be there. Look up. Look up. These are tough days to look up, aren't they? Tough days to just say, trouble's always going to be there, but there's love out there, there's good stuff. So we say the words proudly here, equity and inclusion, because those words might be under attack, under siege, one might say, by our government and business leaders. But we know that equity and inclusion must remain one of our central values. As a religion, we have long recognized that we are each worthy and all belong. With such a theology, however imperfectly, we have practiced it. Equity and inclusion is in our DNA. Studied by our own values and theology, we are able then, I think, to recognize current posturing and undermining policies as simply more in a long line of examples of our country's regrettable, reactionary actions in response to whatever gains are made in racial equity, whether from Reconstruction to the Civil Rights Act to the election of Barack Obama. No matter, because we in this faith tradition shall not be moved. We are convicted that each is worthy and all are connected. You see, this dates back a really long time. It's like 200 years ago that our best-known minister at the time, our Unitarian forebear, William Ellery Channing, put it, "We are living members of the great family of all souls." And as Channing was quick to add, we cannot improve or suffer ourselves without diffusing good or evil around us through an ever-enlarging sphere. This has long been our central task in this living tradition, to recognize that our suffering is intertwined and to note our shared responsibility for repairing the ills and injustices of this world. Now, our intern, Michael DeSantis, reminded us just a couple of weeks ago that it's easy, though. It's so easy to sit within these walls and to comfort ourselves with the notion that we hold the moral high ground. I mean, who doesn't like a little righteous indignation, a little, golly, I'm good. I mean, who doesn't just kind of wiggle with it? It's so easy, but it's quite another, they told us, to live it. What's more, Michael said, it's easy to point a finger beyond this walls, beyond our own skin. The problems are out there. It's them. They don't think right. If only folks were just more like us. Heard? Yeah. But there is, as Channing knew centuries ago now, work to be done within the walls, within ourselves. We are surely a part of the family of all souls, and yet Channing was quick to solicit the help of the holy in ridding us from the ways in which we too hold ourselves apart from that family. That quote I started with you ends like this: God deliver us. God deliver us from prejudice and unkindness and fill us with the love of truth and virtue. Yet, as Michael told us, it's so much easier to rest in our open attitudes and point fingers than to do the work of inclusion. And that work, friends, is about engagement as well as acknowledging the ways in which, despite our openness, we haven't always been, in every occasion, equitable or inclusive. You know, and I know, that this is very hard work. And this very hard work is terribly out of fashion these days. Looking back owning mistakes, missteps, and misperceptions is these days seen as weakness. It is seen as shameful and as a lack of pride. And yet those of us who have benefited from therapy and or 12-step programs know that by owning our past, we participate in our own healing. And in doing so, we grow in resilience, empathy, and forgiveness. We are able to be more present and authentic. We make room for growing when we aren't locked into the harms and hurts of our past that are real, but that are not the sum total of who we are, who we were meant to be. What makes us humans beautiful, I think, what gives me hope, isn't the things that come easily to us, nor is it the things that the huge changes brought about by disruptive events. For me, what gives me hope for our species is evolution, not revolution. The evolution of our conscience and consciousness. How lovely it is that we don't always need some big thing to stop us in our tracks and make us reevaluate and reconsider our path. Now, this isn't easy either, this going inward. As writer Annie Lamott offers, my mind is a neighborhood I try not to go into alone or after dark. It's humbling. It's humbling. And in doing so, we will likely find instances when we were wrong. When our past self was out of step with our current understanding. When we held regrettable views, when we did regrettable things. And when I look back, I have plenty to confess. Plenty by which to be humbled. Plenty of mistakes, plenty of lessons. When I think about my own desire to be included, I remember aching to be seen as human. I wanted others to see me as just like them. And then, on the occasions that seemed to be happening, I got mad as hell that people dismissed the differences between us, or the challenges that were endemic in my life. And my family didn't celebrate when I found love and home in another. No one threw a party or made an announcement. There were no gifts, no congratulations, and no validation. And I know as sure as I am standing here that had I been hospitalized in my young adult years, there would have been no yielding by my family to my beloved's decision-making abilities, absent legal documents granting her that authority, and then even maybe not so much. See, I wanted people, especially the ones who claimed to be my friends, to be allies. I wanted them to get that my life was not steeped in their straight privilege. Straight privilege that they couldn't see, but shaped their very existence and viewpoint. Now, just as an aside, did you see what I just did? I began my confession, as Michael invited us to a couple of weeks ago. I began my confession by telling you how wronged I'd been. Like I said, this stuff is humbling. Because here's the thing, here's the very human thing. When I came into a space where I was accepted, like my first Unitarian Universalist church, I acted the same way. I wanted to accept others as being just like me. And if I didn't fully ignore differences, I sure didn't express curiosity about any of it. I used the word we indiscriminately, as if by its use I could speak for all of us, or that it would prove my inclusiveness. Like others, I wanted to be safe. I didn't want to do or say anything wrong. I didn't want to hurt anybody. I didn't want to hear any challenges. I just wanted everybody to get along. to not have any hard or unwelcome feelings. I wanted to skip to the place where we were all one, where, dare I regrettably say, that all lives matter. And while, of course, all lives do matter, we can't skip the huge swaths of our history and present which demonstrate that they didn't, they haven't, and they don't. Oliver Wendell Holmes brilliantly offered the problem with all of that when he said, I would not give a fig for the simplicity on this side of complexity. But for the simplicity on the other side of complexity, I would give you anything I have. I wanted it to be simple before I grappled with the complexity of it. To speak this aloud is embarrassing. I wish I could stand before you and say I have always just gotten it. I've always been equitable and inclusive. Dang, I'm still waiting to make my first mistake. But I was birthed and shaped by fearful people in an age when minimization of difference seemed like the most white people could ever hope for. The most enlightened parenting of my parents' generation told us to be colorblind. We shouldn't see difference. But of course we did. And then we couldn't talk about it or be curious about it. That turned out to be the simplicity before the complexity. And we know now it wasn't worth a fig. And now that we know that, we can make a different choice. One centered in our religious values and sensibilities, values which help us grow into the people we are called to be. Sometimes the call comes in louder than others. And help us work together to shape the world where justice just is. You know, this church thing is a funny business. So many of us never thought we would be in a church. I sure didn't. So be careful the cup you don't think you're going to drink from, because it's the one with free refills, friends. And when we came through the doors, we said so many things about why we're here. For community, we say, to help answer my kids' questions, for the music. Sometimes we even get a little bit more vulnerable and we name that we're lonely. Or someone we loved has died, or that we are struggling at work or with a diagnosis. And there is truth in each of these, of course, but I think the real reason we come to church, a church like this, is that we long to be with others, intent on becoming better humans, and to together create a better world. Nancy McDonald Ladd is one of our current prophetic ministers, and she offered a compelling sermon at our national gathering several years back, and in it she said this, quote, "We come because we have a deep, aching need for an encounter with the holy that crosses our borders and expands our hearts. We come to be a part of something so much larger than ourselves, and we cannot do that holy work together unless we are really willing to set aside our own need to win and reach our hands and seek the deeper understanding that comes with difference. We in the liberal church," she said, "are called to help create an America that moves beyond the punitiveness and division of our days. We cannot enter this coalition only on terms we choose for ourselves. We must enter into beloved community ready to have the terms change in ways we ourselves could never have imagined, ready to show up even and especially when we do not get what we thought we wanted. We must enter into community, beloved community, ready to have the terms changed in ways we could never have imagined. You see, on a day in which we meet as a congregation to vote on whether or not to change our name, this is important to remember. Many of us born with the privilege of white skin couldn't have asked, wouldn't have known to ask, what is the impact of this name? What does this name signal about our sense of equity and inclusion? As a congregation, we believed rightfully that we were good and caring people. We believe in and work for justice. We didn't see really the power of a name, but now we do. And now we can do better. Thank you. Many of us these days are loving the words and the writings and the speaking of Robin Wall Kimmerer, a botanist and indigenous author and professor. She shared a story in her most recent book, Service Berry, about offering a lecture at a college of natural resources at a prestigious university. She asked the audience after giving her lecture, she said, "What do those words mean?" Now, unbeknownst to her, the college was in the midst of changing its name. So the audience was quick to reveal that they understood the extractive implications of its name, that natural resources were only resources for humans. So Kimmerer looked out at them and she said, "Why don't you call your department the Department of Earthly Gifts?" Therefore kind of underscoring her notion and this thing that she talks about so much, that imploring all of us toward relationship with the natural world as one of reciprocity rather than extraction. And there was wild enthusiasm. And there were people who were shouting out, "Yeah, that's where I want to work. Yeah, that's where I want to study," they said. And then, of course, sometime later, they went a completely different direction, kept their name, and added, "and conservation." Kimber had some despair, I would think it's fair to say. And when speaking with a colleague, her colleague said to her, "Well, it is a beautiful idea, but it would kind of put the kibosh on grinding up trees," right? There is power in a name. It contains and signals values and inspiration and offers accountability. We know that. We know that because we know how we feel when told that the Gulf of Mexico should now be called the Gulf of America, or that Denali should again be called Mount McKinley, or the list goes on. And still, any of us can ask, and a few of us have asked, amid all that needs doing in the world, is this the biggest thing? Shouldn't we be focused on something else, something more? Is really the name that it? But beloveds, this isn't the end. This is the beginning. This is a reckoning. This is an aligning with our better imagination and our deeper hopes. This is a clear indication that we refuse to allow ourselves and this church to be shaped by our culture currently as it is and does, trafficking in protectionism, paternalism, and a patriotism so slimly defined that many of us are not only cast out of the country, but cast out of humanity's embrace. We know better. We dream bigger, even and especially when things look the bleakest, we look up. We come together here to be reminded, to remember together, to feel the despair of what is and not to surrender to it. You know, I told the first service, I'm not really a science fiction person, and some of you like me anyway, and some of you, well, anyway. But I've found that I'm more drawn to it these days. There's something about reading and watching things that are even more dystopian than I'm currently experiencing. And so in another one of those Star Wars prequel sorts of things, a series maybe some of you know of called Andor. Any fans? I'm catching up, people. The first season ends with this. It's a little long, but I share it in its entirety. There will be times. There will be times when the struggle seems impossible. I know this already. Alone, unsure, dwarfed by the scale of the enemy, remember this: freedom is a pure idea. It occurs spontaneously and without instruction. Random acts of insurrection are occurring constantly throughout the galaxy. There are whole armies, battalions that have no idea they've already enlisted in the cause. Remember that the frontier of the rebellion is everywhere. And even the smallest act of insurrection pushes our lines forward. And remember this. The imperial need for control is so desperate because it is so unnatural. Tyranny requires constant effort. It breaks, it leaks. Authority is brittle. Oppression is the mask of fear. Remember that and know this. The day will come when all these skirmishes and battles, these moments of defiance, will have flooded the banks of the empire's authority, and then there will be one too many. One single thing will break the siege. Remember this. Remember this. Remember this. And try. One single thing. Who knows what that thing will be? Will it be our name change? Will that start it? I don't know. But together, let's do our part to break this siege. May it be so. Shanti. Shalom. Amen.